Mrs. Williams, Mrs. Malawi Fort, Mr. Tufton, Mr. Mackenzie, Mr. Chuck, Mr. Vaz, Mr. Warmington, Mr. Charles, Mr. Green, Mr. Morgan, Mr. Hutchinson, Mr. Terry Long, Miss Smith, Dr. Dunn, Mrs. Cuthbert Flynn, Mr. Main, Mr. Davis, Mr. Witter, Mr. Brown, Dr. Brown Burke, Dr. Charles, Mr. Chin, Mr. Clark, Mr. Cousins, Miss Crawford, Miss Daly, Miss Davids, Mr. Golding, Mr. Graham, Dr. Guy, Miss Hamilton, Miss Hannah, Mr. Warmington, Mr. Henriquez, Mr. Henry, Mr. Hilton, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Lawrence, Miss Lee, Mr. Miller, Mr. Montague, Miss Morrison, Mrs. Nita Garvey, Mr. Paulwell, Mr. Phillips, Dr. Phillips, Mr. Robertson, Mr. Robinson, Mr. Siblist, Mr. Slowly, Mrs. Vaz, Dr. Wheatley, Mr. Williams, Mr. Wilson, Mr. Wright.
As usual, it is my pleasure and privilege to welcome everybody to another sitting of the Houses of Parliament, Houses of Representative Parliament. I welcome those who are joining us online, those who are here with us in the gallery, and I noticed this evening the gallery has a number of people, including some lovely students sitting on this side. We want to welcome you all heartily to this sitting of the House. I suspect very strongly that the gathering in the gallery this evening has to do with the continuation of the state of constituency debate and the members from St. Catherine East Central and St. Thomas Eastern. We want to welcome you and trust you will have a good evening with us. Welcome also to those of us who are here this evening for the sitting of the House. House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I ask for the suspension of the standing orders to go directly to public business, and then I'll ask for a recommittal of the agenda.
The question before the House is that we have suspension of the agenda and move straight into the item on the agenda noted public business. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Public business.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today we intend to continue the state of constituency debate with contributions from the following members. A member from St. Catherine East Central, the Honorable Orlando Terrelong, and the member from St. Thomas Eastern, Dr. Michelle Charles. So, Madam Speaker, I'll ask at this point that that member from St. Thomas Eastern, Dr. Michelle Charles.
Just before the member starts speaking, I'm not sure I announced the item that we are about to public business. The member from St. Catherine, East Central. And you have permission to speak from a seat other than your own.
I was just about to ask you that, Madam Speaker. Say it again.
St. Thomas.
Permission to speak, right? Madam Speaker, I must first of all say thank you to Almighty God, for it is He who is the architect of my life, and it is He who deserves the highest praise. Madam Speaker, I am delighted to rise for the second time in this honorable House as Member of Parliament for St. Thomas Eastern. Last year, I informed the nation that St. Thomas Eastern had the audacity to shine. This year, Madam Speaker, I stand to inform the nation that despite being faced with unprecedented challenges, there is a flicker of light in St. Thomas Eastern, and we are confident that we will shine. Madam Speaker, I do not take this job and responsibility lightly nor for granted. I accept it with humility and a sense of gratitude, knowing that I have been given an enormous privilege and an enormous responsibility to serve the people of St. Thomas Eastern. To the people of St. Thomas Eastern, I value your confidence in me, and I vow to continue to serve you with sincerity, humility, and commitment. Madam Speaker, let me take the opportunity to thank my daughter Drew and my son Chad, who is here with me today. Thank you to my entire family, especially my parents, Pernell and Gloria Charles. I am eternally grateful for their unwavering love and support. They are truly the wind beneath my wings. Madam Speaker, I must also thank you, our clerk, and the entire staff here in this honorable House who work tirelessly to guide us through our weekly proceedings. Madam Speaker, allow me to acknowledge with deep appreciation our Prime Minister and my parliamentary colleagues, especially the backbenchers on this side, who continue to support me as we work together to build Jamaica back stronger. And of course, our chairman. Madam Speaker, I want to express my gratitude as well to His Worship the Mayor, Michael Hugh, Councillor Michael McLeod, caretakers Nordine McKenzie and Denver Howell. Madam Speaker, all the incredible work we have been able to do over the last year would not have been possible without the assistance of our secretaries, Ms. Shaquila Cooper and Ms. Shanae Small. I must acknowledge them. To my social media family and my entire Diamond team, you know who you are. I thank you for your hard work and unwavering support. Madam Speaker, in 1865, Paul Bogle led a demonstration from St. Thomas to Spanish Town, which indeed changed the landscape of Jamaica and, may I say, the world. In my last presentation, I informed this House that I was in discussion with the minister and member from Central St. Catherine about returning the Paul Bogle statue to its rightful place and for a proclamation of a Paul Bogle Day. Recently, the member from St. Andrew South, who I must put on record that I rarely agree with, has found favor with my former presentation, calling for the recognition for the sacrifice and commitment of Paul Bogle, and for the first time at last, brought a motion to this House asking that a national commemoration church service be held on October the 24th, which is the day that Paul Bogle was hung by colonial authorities at the Morant Bay Courthouse. The member reminded us that the St. Thomas Parish Council passed this resolution on February the 11th, 1999. Madam Speaker, 1999, 23 years ago, 284 months ago, 8,657 days ago. Allow me to tell this member through you, Madam Speaker, that I know that they're used to pipeline politics, but I am that flickering light in the darkness. I support this resolution, and I look forward to the debate. After 23 years of discussion, Madam Speaker, time come to celebrate Paul Bogle annually, and I might ask the minister and member from Central St. Catherine to consider transforming the old courthouse in Morant Bay into a national museum, which will keep the history of St. Thomas alive. Imagine a national museum right there in Paul Bogle Square. So when you come to Morant Bay, especially if you are a first-time visitor, you will get to see world-famous monuments and memorials. You can even jump on a tour bus right there from the capital, accompanied by knowledgeable tour guide, and visit the many iconic landmarks in St. Thomas. There is a flickering light in St. Thomas Eastern, and we will shine. Madam Speaker, the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries, through RADA, continue to support and respond to the needs of our farmers in St. Thomas Eastern. I must thank them. Madam Speaker, we have approximately 6,870 farmers registered under the Agriculture Business Information System and 19 active farmer groups in St. Thomas Eastern. During my discussion with some of them, one of their concerns was a lack of equipment needed to assist with plowing and heavy-duty farming. Allow me to thank the minister and member from Clarendon Southeastern for providing a cat backhoe, and to tell this honorable house that we're also expecting a tractor as well, both equipment worth way over $35 million. These equipments will be used to also assist with farm road rehabilitation, responding to emergencies and natural disasters for land management, as well as drought mitigation. We in the East have several landslides a year, Madam Speaker, and we are extremely grateful for these generous gifts. Madam Speaker, through RADA and our minister, under the National Irish Potato Program, 3.1 hectares of Irish potato was established in Lyson, Wilmington, Rowlandsfield, and PGR communities involving 19 farmers. Also, 2 additional farmers established a 2.8 hectares privately at the Plantain Garden River. Under the small-scale quarter-dip drip irrigation system program, 32 1,000-gallon tanks were delivered to 32 beneficiaries to establish vegetable crops. Our farmer groups benefited from 310 bags of Morocco fertilizer to aid in the increase of crop production and productivity. Under the Farm Road Rehabilitation Program, the following farm roads have been rehabilitated: Leith Hall to Riverhead, Beacon Hill to 4 Mile, Springfield to Barking Lodge to Chapel Hill, Thornton to Sunny Hill, and Johnson Mountain to Cedar Grove, covering 2,800 meters and benefiting over 3,000 farmers directly. Madam Speaker, through you, allow me to thank the minister for Penton Town Road, which has been selected and approved for rehabilitation this financial year, 2022 to 2023. And before he claps, I'd like to invite him to tour the farm road in Hayfield. The one in Hayfield is in dire need of rehabilitation. The farmers are crying out for some assistance. Is that an announcement? So, Minister, please come and join us in Hayfield. And if you have an announcement, we'd welcome it. Under the National Chicken Project, 27 farmers benefited from 1,252 baby chicks, along with 108 bags of feed. Under the Livestock Flood Recovery Program, the parish received $1.5 million of broiler project to improve good husbandry practices among broiler farmers through training and monitoring, thereby improving their livelihood. The project is intended to benefit 60 farmers in the eastern section of the parish, with 3 training sessions on broiler production and management principles from day old to slaughter, impacting 9 communities and benefiting approximately 150 farmers. Madam Speaker, in July 2020, I met a young mother of 3 who asked me to assist her with some chicken to raise. The next time I saw her, some 6 months later, she asked me again for some more chicken to raise. After a long discussion, I realized that her grandmother taught her how to raise chickens, but she didn't teach her how to raise chickens as a business. I walked away from that conversation saying to myself that this young lady deserves to learn how to run a successful business. I want to thank the ministry for partnering with me to create a chick farmer project where 50 female farmers will benefit from not only receiving chicken and chicken feed, but to enjoy close monitoring and education on how to run their chicken business. I would also like to congratulate the 20 farmers from the Needham Penn Farmers Group who recently graduated from the Farmer Field School Training Program in collaboration with the Commonwealth of Learning and RADA. You see, Madam Speaker, this government doesn't just give you a chicken. This government will teach you how to raise chicken as a business. So in 2 years, Madam Speaker, when you come to the east side, you will not only see KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken Company at the urban center that possibly may sell chickens from our farmers, but Madam Speaker, you may also see STFC, St. Thomas Fried Chicken Company, built by labor force of St. Thomas, finger licking good. Madam Speaker, St. Thomas Eastern is filled with entrepreneurial farmers who are willing to transform our agriculture and fisheries sector to make it prosperous, innovative, sustainable, and internationally competitive. Madam Speaker, there is a flickering light in the darkness of the pipeline of St. Thomas Eastern, and this Andrew Holness-led government must be praised. Madam Speaker, the #1 request from my constituents is to be recommended for overseas employment. Some residents have housekeeping certificates and refuse to work as a housekeeper in Jamaica. They prefer to do the same work abroad. Madam Speaker, the Overseas Employment Program has provided economic support for thousands of families in St. Thomas Eastern. The Farm Work Program in particular has helped families to repair and even secure new homes, to educate their children, to maintain a savings account and other social amenities. There will always be challenges with these programs, so let me encourage those liaison officers that we pay abroad to stay close to our farmers, stay close to our farm workers, and to listen keenly to their concerns. You are the conduit between the farmers and us here in Jamaica, and they need to feel confident that they're being heard and helped. I want to thank the minister and member from St. Andrew Northwestern for the 50 persons we were able to recommend to the program this year, and to encourage his team to craft a strategy to expand the program to include other traditional and non-traditional jobs. Madam Speaker, this Andrew Holness-led government continues to safeguard the rights of vulnerable citizens in Jamaica, and we in St. Thomas Eastern want to thank the ministries for food packages and for helping 300 constituents with care grants in the sum of $10,000 each. Madam Speaker, last May, 32 business owners lost everything to fire at the Morant Bay Arcade. I'm happy to announce to this honorable House that the minister and member from St. Andrew Northwestern, through NIS, has committed to assist those business persons along during this difficult time as well. Madam Speaker, the education of our people is paramount to the growth and development of our country. Help me to thank the minister and member from Portland Western, along with Flo and the Universal Service Fund, for establishing free community Wi-Fi stations in Morant Bay, Randolph Elder Park, and Duckinfield. We have a commitment for Bath and Port Morant as well, and we look forward to its completion. Madam Speaker, $9 million this year has been dedicated to education, $6 million from the CDF and $3 million from the Ministry of Finance, where students benefited from grants for primary school, secondary school, tertiary school. We also help with book vouchers, school supplies, uniforms, electronic devices, and school bags. We hosted 3 back-to-school dental fairs, and Madam Speaker, for the very first time, our first PEP Award, where 36 students were celebrated and received additional grants as well. Madam Speaker, there is an ugly tsunami of violence occurring in our schools. And as a mother, I'm deeply, deeply concerned. I call on the Ministry of Education to seriously consider mandatory implementation of conflict resolution courses beginning at the primary level. A 3-year-old child must realize that if another child takes their toy, They do not have to punch them to get it back. We want to encourage our teachers to show these young children how to resolve conflicts in peace. I want to call on our PTA presidents as well to begin hosting classes and invite parents to learn skills that they may be lacking to encourage their children to be better citizens and to resolve conflict without violence. Madam Speaker, a few days ago, more than half of the teachers at Paul Boga High School embarked on a sick-out, reportedly due to poor leadership. I want to tell the teachers, through you, Madam Speaker, that this member of Parliament appreciates you. I have already met with the principal and the board chairman, and they understand that in St. Thomas Eastern, I demand that our teachers must be heard and respected. I want the students in St. Thomas Eastern to know that all that we see going on social media, with students disrespecting teachers and not wanting to follow the school rules, will not be tolerated by this mother and member of Parliament. Our government has been consistently clear. We believe in law and order. We are building St. Thomas Eastern. Jobs are coming. Growth is coming. So respect your elders, respect each other, get your education, and get ready. There is a flickering light in St. Thomas Eastern. And with respect for ourselves and each other, we will shine. Madam Speaker, do you know that smiling can trick your brain into happiness and boost your health? As a smile spurs a chemical reaction in the brain, releasing certain hormones, including dopamine and serotonin. Dopamine increases our feelings of happiness, and serotonin release is associated with reduced stress. It should be recalled from my last presentation in this House that St. Thomas Jamaica Smiles was to be launched this year, 2022. I am happy to announce that already 3 patients have had their smile changed from this program, and 6 more are currently being treated to date. It is hard to smile in these troubling times, and especially if you're missing teeth. So changing one smile can change their life. This summer, while participating in the 3 dental fairs and assisting several students throughout the constituency, I noticed that our dental clinics need a boost. And I'm in negotiation with the ministry and Sarah to assist us to spruce up the clinics. Last year, I challenged the investors, local and abroad, to consider investing in a dialysis center on the east side. I'm happy to say that negotiations are well on its way to locating at least 2 companies seriously willing to investigate the possibilities of opening a center in our constituency. Madam Speaker, some persons after having dialysis treatment for years end up needing a kidney transplant to save their life. Organ donation is the act of taking healthy organ and tissue from one person and giving them to someone else. Making the decision to donate your organs is one of the most generous gifts you can give. I would like to invite the minister and member from St. Catherine West Central to consider a national education campaign on organ transplant and organ donation. I would also like to see the University of the West Indies Hospital re-implement a transplant clinic here in Jamaica and train our new residents, doctors as well. Madam Speaker, the NIDS identification card is welcome, and if I may also suggest to the minister and member from St. Elizabeth Southwest to consider offering the option of placing on the ID if one wants to be an organ donor. Madam Speaker, St. Thomas Eastern continues to be plagued by water shortage. If water is life, then we are dying of thirst in St. Thomas Eastern. $1.5 million from the CDF has been allotted to assist the National Water Commission as backup truck water and supply for my constituency. Madam Speaker, if you check the DNA of the water here in Kingston and St. Andrew, you will see some of it originates from St. Thomas. So, Madam Speaker, if we are supplying water, if we have so much to give, why must we be suffering from lack of water? Pastor for christening him picnic first. Not true, Madam Speaker? Yes. I'm happy to announce that upgrading works have commenced at the Springfield facility. This involves the drilling of a new well, which was just completed, and the pump purchase is in progress. An upgrade to the electromechanical equipment, including new upgrade pumps, and the installation of new water lines for the new mains to Stanton housing scheme. Tentative completion date of this project is mid-2024. The Apple Farm pumping station is located in Bachelor's Hall. This pumping station is the most active pumping station that supplies over 6 communities with flowing pipe water. The station is often out of service due to electrical problems caused by the overload and lock-offs. This system suffers from serious JPS issues, which sometimes affects the communities served for an average of 2 to 3 days. Imagine 2 to 3 days with no water. It was agreed that the NWC regional manager would work to improve the communication with the JPS and, by extension, the response time of JPS repairs and improvement in the service delivery. Apple Farm system is currently being assessed by the NWC Engineering Department for further recommendations, including the creation of 6 discrete systems, which should lead to service improvement. My request for a generator for Apple Farm has been put back on the table, and we will be exploring further by the National Water Commission. Materials have been secured to allow for the separation of the distribution and transmission lines so that the Johnstown tank can be filled and the area gravity fed. This will improve the service of the community, especially in the dry periods. This work will be completed within the next 2 months. The Prospect tank requires more work as new lines cannot be put in at this time. There are a number of illegal consumers on the line, resulting in the tank taking days to be filled. NRW work is currently on its way to minimize technical and commercial losses. The revenue team will be commissioned to regularize the illegal users, and an altitude valve will be installed for the tank to stem away losses as a result of overflow. Madam Speaker, after meeting with NWC leaders and coming up with this plan, I can see there is a flickering light, and I look forward to working with them. Madam Speaker, during my last presentation, just a year ago, St. Thomas was on edge as an alleged rapist out on bail had kidnapped 2 girls and was on the run. I called for a more effective system and for legislative changes to include electronic monitoring. Let me thank the minister and member from St. James West Central as electronic monitoring has now been added to the new Bail Act, and I look forward to the debate and passing of this bill. As for Felissa and Wishay, the 2 victims in this case, they continue to heal and be loved by those around them. As for the accused, his last court date was the 21st of July 2022 at the Morant Bay Parish Court. He was remanded and is scheduled to return to court on November the 24th, 2022 by Parish Judge T. Robinson. Madam Speaker, garbage, garbage, garbage. To say the collection of garbage is a challenge in St. Thomas Eastern is an understatement. Sometimes our collection is 10 to 15 loads behind in over 10 communities. The garbage truck currently leaves Kingston every morning and traverses our road, which is under construction, to reach Morant Bay mid-morning, clean the town, and head back to Kingston for evening. It is disheartening, and the additional 100 garbage trucks cannot come soon enough. In the meantime, Madam Speaker, let me thank TBDCO for partnering with us by adding more garbage skips throughout the constituency. I would also like to remind my constituents to continue to separate and bag their garbage and even drop off your plastic to the recycling depot right there in Morant Bay. Madam Speaker, the collection of garbage is managed by local government, but I have a commitment from NSWMA. They have promised a huge uptick in the collection of garbage in my constituency now that 50 new trucks have arrived. I've been informed that instead of 1 truck to service my entire constituency, we now have 2 and an additional 1 for commercial usage. Madam Speaker, I look forward to the plans that this agency has for St. Thomas Eastern, as we are expecting a bounce in our population over the next few years as we continue to develop. I'm also told that NSWMA is currently interviewing with the intention to hire drivers to assist us with the possibility of retaining a truck in the parish overnight. But for now, they still have to go back to Kingston. Speaking about drivers, Madam Speaker, I have a problem with the drivers traversing the St. Thomas roads. Just the other day on my way to Kingston, a vehicle overtook 5 vehicles in a row around a corner and just barely missed, causing a horrible accident in the construction zone. This happens every day on our roads, not only in St. Thomas, but all of Jamaica. Last week, here in Kingston, a car recklessly overtook several vehicles in a line of traffic to push himself in front of my car and barely missed hitting me. And Madam Speaker, I stuck my head out the window and asked him, "Why are you driving like this? You should get a ticket." Do you know what his reply was to me, Madam Speaker? He said, "Son of nothing, we just pay it then." Madam Speaker, for overtaking in the manner of causing obstruction to oncoming traffic is only $10,000 fine. Madam Speaker, to date, we have lost over 365 persons to road accident, and we still have 2 more months to go in this year. Reckless drivers must be held accountable for their actions. It cannot be just about receiving a ticket, which many of them have so many outstanding, and even with amnesty, their actions remain the same. Madam Speaker, the majority of persons who drive in Jamaica are safe drivers. Notwithstanding, we need to change the way reckless drivers think in Jamaica. And that can only be done through education. I am calling for an amendment to the Road Traffic Act to include mandatory GADD school, Jamaicans Against Dangerous Driving. These courses should include an accident prevention course, a drug alcohol awareness course, and a driver improvement course as well. I recommend the JAD school for who receive tickets for overtaking in a manner causing obstruction to traffic and careless driving with or without collision. I am calling for a minimum of 6 to 8 hours for JAD traffic school for speeding and 12 to 16 hours for habitual traffic offenders and reckless and dangerous drivers. Madam Speaker, the riders on the motorcycle must not think that I have forgotten them. They too must also be included. Madam Speaker, while we welcome the new and improved roads in St. Thomas Eastern, we also want to ensure our own safety. Imagine a country with disciplined driver on the road. There's a flicker of light. There is a flicker of light in St. Thomas Eastern and Jamaica, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, allow me to now address the elephant in the room, my roads in St. Thomas Eastern. The roads, the roads, the roads. Many of you here in this house, including you, as leader of the opposition, many of you here in this house have said to me that you will not come back to St. Thomas until the road is fixed. Madam Speaker, there are many reasons why we must fix our roads. One in particular is because most of my single male friends here want to come to my constituency, but not to visit me. Not to visit me, Madam Speaker. They want to come to the east side because we have the most beautiful women. Allow me to say congratulations to our 2022 Miss Universe Jamaica, Tashami Calvin, who hails from the Bath Division of St. Thomas Eastern. And speaking of the Bath Division, Madam Speaker, it gives me great pleasure to announce, with a grateful heart, that the project to rehabilitate the road leading to Bath Fountain Hotel and Spa has been approved. This is a partnership between the Tourism Enhancement Fund and the National Works Agency, which will assist with the implementation. The scope of work includes site clearance, bushing and drain cleaning, earthworks, excavation of soft spots and refilling, pavement, wall and masonry, and the letter of acceptance was signed on July 18, 2022 by the contractor. The contract was signed between the National Works Agency and Morris Hill Limited, an amount of a little bit more than $45 million. Work is expected to commence before the end of the year. Madam Speaker, the people of St. Thomas Eastern welcome the roads. We welcome the development, but the dust nuisance due to the South Coast Highway Roadwork project is causing health problems. Our hospital, our schools, our churches, the vendors, and our residents are all along the main road, and I get calls every day. I get daily complaints from the doctors, the nurses, the residents, the patients, the business community, everybody, even the teachers have demonstrated, Madam Speaker. Traversing our main roads in St. Thomas is extremely difficult and very frustrating and hard on our pockets. We car front lick out, middle end lick out, back end lick out, chassis twist, rock and pinion gone, shocks now shock again, Madam Speaker. The people of St. Thomas Eastern have elected me to be their voice and to represent them in this honourable House. I acknowledge through, and I too traverse our roads. I want my constituency to know that this government cares, and we're working day and night to remedy the situation. I invite them and Jamaica to follow me on social media platforms at Dr. Michelle Charles and to view our weekly updates and everything we're doing in St. Thomas. And I welcome their comments as well. You may also view our WhatsApp status at 876-871-1218. Madam Speaker, the Package 4 of the South Coastal Highway Improvement Project began 1 year before my election. The progress has been slow, and the maintenance and protection of the trafficway extremely uncomfortable. Not only is it uncomfortable, it's downright disrespectful to the people of St. Thomas Eastern. In my last presentation, I reminded my people that we are uncomfortably under construction and pleaded for their understanding while I negotiated with the contractors.
Madam Speaker, I ask that the suspension of the standing orders to enable the member to continue her speech to its conclusion. Thank you.
Question before the House is that the member be given sufficient time to finish her presentation. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Member.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Package 4 of the South Coastal Highway Improvement Project began 1 year before my election. The progress has been slow, and the maintenance and protection of the trafficway extremely uncomfortable and downright disrespectful to the people of St. Thomas Eastern. In my last presentation, I reminded my people that we are uncomfortably under construction and pleaded for their understanding while I negotiated with the contractors. Madam Speaker, I invited the member from St. Catherine Southwest to tour our roads, and he came. He evaluated the progress of the road and made his recommendations. Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister has met with the same contractor as well. Madam Speaker, my people have demonstrated, I have negotiated, and we are still left frustrated. After 3 years, Madam Speaker, I can no longer ask them to be patient. I want to inform this honourable House that I will always stand with the people of St. Thomas Eastern. The people of St. Thomas Eastern have spoken, and I am here to deliver a message. Madam Speaker, we, the people of St. Thomas Eastern, are calling for an immediate removal of the subcontractors NF Barnes Construction and Equipment Company Limited and Kinetics Engineering Services. We call upon the chief contractors, China Harbour Engineering Company Limited, to completely take over the daily operations of the roadwork of Package 4 in St. Thomas Eastern. The poor conditions of the roadwork and slow progress of the work can no longer be tolerated. We trust that CHEC will expedite the work in a manner that is acceptable to all. Madam Speaker, the people of St. Thomas Eastern are holding me accountable, and the contractors must be held accountable as well. Madam Speaker, running a country is extremely challenging, but Madam Speaker, we don't run it the same. We are not the same. This government is building a new St. Thomas. This government is building a new Jamaica. This government is building houses for our citizens and not on Gully Bank, not in the riverbed, not on landfills. Madam Speaker, this Andrew Holness-led government cares for our people. This government is celebrating economic growth and stability. This government is filled with new ideas and new technology. Madam Speaker, the new road in St. Thomas Eastern is rocky and dusty and destroying our lungs and our vehicles. This government will not be blamed for the subcontractors' inadequacy and inability to build proper roads. We are not into no friend business. You must do your job, you must do it well, or you must be removed. Madam Speaker, we are not the same. We see a flicker of light in St. Thomas Eastern. Forward ever, backward never. Madam Speaker, we on this side know that we owe it to our country and to the next generation to improve not only our economic performance, Madam Speaker, but to deliver higher wages, new jobs, sustainable water supply, collect and dispose of our garbage properly and on time, to educate our children and to help them flourish and blossom in a peaceful and violence-free society. Madam Speaker, the people of St. Thomas Eastern know that they are in good hands. They know I respect them, and they know they made the right choice. They know that the potential of St. Thomas Eastern has been held back for decades, and it is now our time to shine. They know that I have only been elected for 2 years, and my mission still remains the same. They know I will do what I was elected to do, and Madam Speaker, they know that even though we have challenges, this Andrew Holness-led government is doing our best, and be assured we are better than the rest. There is a flicker of light in St. Thomas Eastern, Madam Speaker. I pray for love, light, and blessings on St. Thomas Eastern and Jamaica, land we love. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, I want to thank the member from St. Thomas Eastern, Dr. Michelle Charles, MP, and now ask that the member from St. Catherine East Central, the Honourable Alanda Terrelong, that he now be allowed to make his presentation.
Want to thank I want to thank the member from St. Thomas Eastern for a spirited report. And might I add, a very confident member of Parliament in what she has done. I now invite the member from St. Catherine East Central.
Madam Speaker, today I rise as the proud Member of Parliament representing the people of St. Catherine East Central. In making my contribution to the State of the Constituency debate, I must first express my heartfelt gratitude to Almighty God, who has endowed me with visions of growth, development, and prosperity, which I now use in humble service to my constituents and my nation. I am forever grateful for the confidence the Most Honourable Prime Minister, Andrew Holness, has invested in me in affording me the opportunity to both represent the people of St. Catherine East Central and to work with the Honourable Minister, Olivia Babsy-Grange, as her Minister of State in service to the people of East Central and Jamaica in the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport. I am forever indebted to my family, my wife and our 3 young kings, and I thank them for their support and understanding as I answer the most noble of calls, service to country. I wish also to thank my East Central family for their continued support over the years, and all the members of Team Terrelong who have continued to be my standard bearers in our communities, helping me to return as a second-term Member of Parliament for the Jamaica Labour Party, achieving in the soon-to-be 15th parish of Portmore what no other Member of Parliament representing the Jamaica Labour Party has done in Portmore in over 30 years. Special reference must be made of Joy Brown, our councillor for the Gregory Park Division, Marlon Gordon, my constituency development officer, and our councillor caretaker for the Portmore Pines Division, and the late Lennox Hines of blessed memory, who served as councillor caretaker for the Southborough Division. The confidence that you have all placed in me since 2016 has helped our constituency and nation to realise the hope of prosperity. Madam Speaker, hope springs eternal in East Central St. Catherine, and we live by the philosophy that we are more than a community, we are family. So I will always big up my East Central St. Catherine family and thank them for remaining strong with Terrelong. In realising the hope of prosperity, my team and I have remained committed to build a more prosperous constituency, one person, one family, one community at a time. We continue to build East Central around the key pillars of education, infrastructure development, sports, family, social welfare, youth empowerment, and job creation. My East Central family has also been affected by and remains concerned about matters of national importance, such as toxic masculinity and the treatment of our women and girls in our society, neo-colonial perspectives and issues of identity in a country with a population that has more than 95% of people of Afro descent. And as we celebrate Jamaica 60, my East Central family are jubilant by the pronouncements as a government that Jamaica will be moving towards republic status, and many constituents have asked me to make representations on their behalf by way of advocating that Bob Marley and Louise Bennett be named heroes of the new republic. In education, I believe with every fibre of my being that an education is the best gift we can give to our young kings and queens. And education is the medium through which a nation builds thinkers, innovators, and leaders of tomorrow. No nation can achieve true development without making a great investment in its human capital, and that can only be achieved by educating its people. In that respect, Madam Speaker, under my stewardship as Member of Parliament, we have committed $7 million from our Constituency Development Fund each year to support our students, parents, and families with their back-to-school and academic needs. I pause here, Madam Speaker, to make special mention of Principal Williams and his team who are here from the Gregory Park Primary School, Principal Geddes and Chairperson Evans from Independent City Primary, Principal Prince and her team from the Cedar Grove Academy, Principal Givens from the Nagahead Primary School. Madam Speaker, they are all here today, and present with them are our young kings and queens upon whose shoulders the hope of a more prosperous future for East Central St. Catherine and Jamaica will be realized. This year, another 50 top students from our primary schools were rewarded with trophies and bursaries in the sum of between $10,000 and $15,000 as part of the Terry Long Award for Academic Excellence. Additionally, with the help of additional funding from the Ministry of Finance, over 2,500 students received book vouchers valued between $3,000 and $5,000, and some 100 university students received tertiary grants between $25,000 and $30,000 to help with their tuition. With the support of the Minister of Education, we were able to assist more students with devices for their own use under the Own Your Own Device program. Madam Speaker, to that end, thanks to the Minister, JADCO and other partners, we were able to provide approximately 200 students, including some of those here today in the gallery, with tablets. In realizing the hope of prosperity through education, we recognize in East Central that it is incumbent upon us to increase digital literacy. The award of some 200 students with smart devices is a big win for us in East Central, and we are already making plans to award another 150 more students with devices. This is important, as since the onset of COVID-19, how we educate as well as how we deliver quality education to our young kings and queens has changed. COVID highlighted many gaps in our education system, chief amongst them the imbalance between the haves and the have-nots, and the access to data, internet, and the provision of smart devices. And so, Madam Speaker, access to data, internet, and smart devices must be treated as a basic human right for every household, no different from the right to water as a means of survival in this, the fourth industrial revolution, the age of technology. Madam Speaker, I want to thank again the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Technology through their agency, the Universal Service Fund, for recognizing this right of all Jamaicans. Under the Own Your Own Device program, some 40,000 students across Jamaica will have access to smart devices. Under the Community Wi-Fi program, some 189 communities will benefit from free Wi-Fi at central points in their communities. So, Madam Speaker, not only are we rolling out the smart devices and putting technology and the world into the hands of our young kings and queens as a responsible government poised for a prosperous future. In preparing our young kings and queens to be leaders of tomorrow, we are giving them access to data and internet so they, their families, and communities can connect their devices within their communities. Already in East Central, we have 2 Wi-Fi hotspots in Newlands and Gregory Park, with 2 more projects to come online in Christian Penn and Caymanas Gardens Site A. And I want to thank Minister Vaz, Mr. Dawes, and our entire team at the USF for their commitment to ensure that all Jamaicans log on to the digital age. An education rooted in information and communications technology is important to my East Central family, Madam Speaker, for we understand that technology is the way of the future, and that future is not some abstract distance of time, but that future is now. And so, Madam Speaker, while our government continues to make bold steps towards the implementation of STEM and STEAM programs in our classrooms, I will continue to make representations on behalf of my constituents that in closing the gap between developing world and developed world status, we need to ensure that starting as early as 3 years old, all our children are learning basic computer management skills. I go further, that by age 6, they must all be learning coding, robotics, and be introduced to the world of artificial intelligence, which is a highly modern and effective tool to support student learning and assessment. In a world that sees billions of children accessing various platforms across the internet each day, from Roblox and educational online games, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and a plethora of other platforms, it is imperative that we help them to hone their creative skills while teaching them safe and responsible social media relations. Madam Speaker, countries such as Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Finland, and Estonia are seen as global technological powerhouses. The common denominator amongst these countries is that more than 50% of pupils start using computers at the age of 6 and younger. Various studies have pointed out that students who use computers moderately during school tend to perform better than those who rarely use computers. Added to that, the countries that are leading in ICT have booming economies, especially in light of the post-pandemic period and the onset of the fourth industrial revolution, Madam Speaker. If we're ever to transition to developed country status, it is a must that ICT be taught in early childhood education to keep our children ahead with ever-changing and fluid, with the ever-changing and fluid world that we live in. To quote one world leader, Madam Speaker, Jamaica must become producers of technology and not just users of technology. That world leader is our very own Prime Minister, Andrew Holness. And for us to become producers of technology, we must equip our young kings and queens with the relevant knowledge, skill, and expertise in ICT, robotics, coding, artificial intelligence, and other areas. Where infrastructure development vis-à-vis housing and roads are concerned, Madam Speaker, while we have made great improvements in the infrastructure development of East Central, there is much more work to be done. The question of housing remains an important issue for our constituents who inhabit the informal communities of Gulf and Mexico in the Gregory Park Division. Since 2016, we have had several meetings with senior management at the National Housing Trust, and as recently as the beginning of this month, my discussions with senior representatives from the Trust have reaffirmed the importance of a modern low-income housing development for these communities. Madam Speaker, the citizens of Mexico and Gulf do not want to be labeled as squatters, the term I myself find offensive. They want to break the generational curse that our forefathers suffered after leaving the plantations upon emancipation, of living in informal settlements, plagued with the absence of proper infrastructure and suitable amenities for their children. They desire to be homeowners in their own right, with their own titles and pushing their own keys. Madam Speaker, we have also seen in the news very often that sections of these communities continue to be plagued by crime and violence. The labyrinth of dirt tracks, overgrown bushes, and choppy getaways via the Dyke Road, compounded by clusters of wooden homes and zinc structures, make the area impossible to police. Madam Speaker, I posit that a long-term solution to the crime and criminality in these areas must be to develop a proper housing scheme for the residents. One with modern amenities to foster the growth of families and engender community pride, and with the requisite infrastructure that makes it easily policed. The development of new and suitable low-income housing schemes across Jamaica, together with the land reform that the government has started, will ensure that the descendants of our enslaved ancestors will own a piece of land that our forefathers liberated from the tyranny of slavery and colonialism through blood, sweat, and tears. Madam Speaker, I am at pains to see an end to our brothers and sisters living in informal settlements nearly 200 years since the abolition of slavery. As a Jamaican who grew up in a one-bedroom board house in the inner city community of Grand Spen with no lights and water more than 30 years ago, it pains me to see that thousands of Jamaicans continue to live in this manner in the age of technology. Neither, Madam Speaker, should anyone advocate for Jamaicans to live at or near dump sites, riverbeds, or gully banks. I want more for my people of East Central St. Catherine. As a government, we want more for our people. I want more for my East Central family. As a government, we want more for our people. To that end, Madam Speaker, I will continue to make representations to the National Housing Trust on my constituents' behalf in the hope that one day we will realize the development of proper schemes in these and other communities. In realizing the hope of prosperity through home ownership, I have also assured my East Central family and can assure all Jamaicans that we can take hope in the fact that we now live in the age of Andrew the Builder, who has made home ownership a key tenet of this Jamaica Labour Party administration. Yes, Madam Speaker, hope springs eternal from the very actions of Andrew Holness and this Jamaica Labour Party-led government in the form of the new social housing program that has sent ripples of hope in the lives of Jamaicans on the one hand and shockwaves of political extinction in the Museum District and other quarters. I want to thank the Prime Minister for initiating this program. As a government, we have completed more housing developments in the history of Jamaica. I have seen my Prime Minister hand over more keys across Jamaica than has ever been done by any other leader. He has truly lived up to his name, Andrew the Builder. Madam Speaker, there is something extra special about this social housing program, for it gives our brothers and sisters who do not have the financial means to own a home the hope of realizing the prosperity that comes from home ownership. In East Central St. Catherine, we have several constituents who will prosper under this program. Sister Mavita, for example, a mother of 3 who has suffered a stroke and is unable to work or provide a proper home for her family, called me 2 weeks ago and she said, Mr. Terry Long, make sure whenever you're talking in Parliament, you thank the Prime Minister for the 3-bedroom house in my bill for me of new lands, you know. And so, Madam Speaker, on behalf of Mavita and the other residents who are close to receiving a home under the new social housing program, I want to say thank you. Thank you to our Prime Minister and our government that has shown that they care for the people and that they do understand that notwithstanding the legacy and history of the enslavement of our forefathers, every single Jamaican deserves and has the right to own a home. Every Jamaican must realize the hope of prosperity in home ownership, not near a dump site or riverside or gully bank, but, Madam Speaker, in developed communities well laid out with playgrounds, bathrooms, sewer systems, electricity, water, roads, and all modern infrastructure and amenities.
Hear, hear.
Madam Speaker, as it relates to the road improvements across East Central and Portmore, I must thank Minister Warmington and the team at the National Works Agency for working with myself and other members of Parliament in Portmore in realizing the hope of prosperity through the expansion and dualization of the roadworks in Portmore. Madam Speaker, I have listened to my constituents bemoan the issue of traffic and how it affects productivity, how it impacts their time getting to and from work and school, and how it affects their livelihood generally. Last November, I met with the team at NWA, including E.G. Hunter, Mr. Downer, and others, to go over plans for the dualization of Grange Lane from Highway 95 all the way down to Augusta Drive in Passage 4. In July, we held a stakeholders meeting with residents of the plan and advised them of the planned developments. And we also met with the contractor to do a walkthrough of the area. I can say with certainty, Madam Speaker, that come January 2024, we would have already commenced the expansion project as we begin to rid Portmore of its traffic woes. The government has also committed several hundreds of millions of dollars to building a new highway coming from the Mandela into Portmore across the Dyke Road with overhead bridge facilities. This will save my East Central family and all Portmore residents some 30 to 40 minutes in traffic time that they would usually spend in traffic. Madam Speaker, I will also continue to make representations on behalf of my constituents, in particular those who live in Portmore Pines and Silverstone and Cedar Grove, to the team at NWA to greatly consider the expansion of Brayton Parkway, and also to assist with funding for some of our minor roads. You see, Madam Speaker, the Municipal Council has been derelict in its duty over the years to properly maintain the minor roads in our communities. Madam Speaker, constituents don't make the distinction between minor roads and major roads, executive government and municipal or local government. Madam Speaker, my East Central family come to me as their Member of Parliament with all their road issues. I can hear them now. MP, Belmore Road no fix yet, you know. MP, Alno Anglin Avenue no fix yet, you know. And so, Madam Speaker, the representation continues. Whilst we have not been able to rehabilitate every road in our communities, Madam Speaker, we have 100 reasons to laud the Prime Minister and the work of this government in recognizing the importance of good roads in all our communities. Madam Speaker, in 2018, the Prime Minister approved the Community Development Project to rehabilitate roads and carry out other infrastructure repairs across the first 100 NHC housing schemes in Jamaica. This year, work began in 2 of our schemes in East Central, Hamilton Gardens and Southborough. While we look forward to work commencing next year in the communities of Lime Tree Grove, Caymanas Garden Site A and Site D. Madam Speaker, I remember making a commitment to the residents of Hamilton Gardens 2016 when they lamented the poor state of their roads and the lack of proper road maintenance in Portmore since the 1980s. I promised them that this government will fix their roads, increase their property value, make them people can ride bicycle and skate on the road, and save them front end and tires from the potholes. The work in Hamilton Gardens was successfully completed this summer. And 2 weeks ago, when I toured the ongoing repairs in Southborough, I was met with great joy by the residents who thanked the government for upgrading the roads in the scheme. Madam Speaker, the promise I made to these residents has been kept. Madam Speaker, thanks to the vision and foresight of our Prime Minister, who works closely with his members of Parliament and faithfully and dutifully puts into action recommendations that will build better and more prosperous communities. Leadership. In sports, Madam Speaker, we continue to recognize the importance of sports and its impact on community safety, community development, and building community spirit. For us, sports is the physical culture that unites the soul. For my part, Madam Speaker, I continue to work with the Sports Development Foundation to outfit our courts and fields across East Central. Successful in getting the court in the community of Southborough rehabilitated, and they now have a brand new multipurpose court where netball and basketball have come alive, similar to the court that was done previously in Caymanas Garden Site A. Our Corner League football and netball programs have brought communities and families together to celebrate the talent of our youth, and we have partnered with the Social Development Commission to host other competitions aimed at bringing peace and unity in communities where there has been an upsurge in violence. Madam Speaker, over the last year, our support for sporting programs in our schools have also increased, and I want to highlight the recent successes in netball, basketball, football and rugby experienced by the Cedar Grove Academy, which is fast becoming not only an academic giant, but also a sporting giant as well. Nagahead Primary remains one of the top athletic schools in the country, whilst Gregory Park Primary has cemented itself as a regional netball powerhouse, even though they do not have a netball court. But, Madam Speaker, hope remains eternal. And as Member of Parliament, I have promised our young kings and queens at Gregory Park Primary a new multipurpose court, and I can finally announce that thanks to the recent commitment of the Toll Authority, funds have been committed to build a brand new multipurpose court for the Gregory Park Primary School. Madam Speaker, in realizing the hope of prosperity, it makes a difference who represents the people, and it even makes more of a difference when corporate Jamaica comes on board and lends its support to uplift those schools and communities, as the government cannot do it alone.
Hear, hear.
Madam Speaker, we have plans for the communities of Christian Penn and Gregory Park, which have seen an upsurge in crime and violence. And to that end, I will continue to make representations to the Sports Development Foundation to see how quickly the requisite funds can be allocated to develop the football mini stadium in Christian Penn, as well as the mini stadium in Ironside, Gregory Park. Madam Speaker, as Member of Parliament, I have recognized that sport empowers youth and has the ability to make considerable changes in their lives. Sports may not be able to solve every single minute detail of crime and violence, but certainly it is highly effective when used and combined with other holistic interventions and programs that can influence change and engender hope. Madam Speaker, as we speak of holistic interventions, my team and I partnered with the Jamaica Millennium Vision for Youth to host marathon CSEC and CAPE classes to empower our youth and help prepare them for their English and mathematics exams. The results speak for themselves, with our students having achieved excellent passes in these subject areas and have gone on to further studies in sixth form and university. We also partnered with HART, the Social Development Commission, the JCF, RGD, PATH, the Ministry of Labour, and others to host several youth fairs over the last year and have devised programs to empower our youth. As a direct result of these youth intervention programs, we have registered over 200 youth in skills training programs at HART and have helped to provide jobs for over 300 youth in the last year. Madam Speaker, Portmore is poised for growth and is ideal for job creation for our youth. With over 15 call centres in Portmore alone, the most in any region on the island, 1,000 more youth from Portmore and other parishes have gained meaningful employment. This has provided them with the opportunity to earn a source of income, fund their education, create homes, and even develop businesses of their own. As Portmore is set to become the 15th parish, its future must be rooted in technology, creativity, solar power, and enterprise, which will see more jobs being created for thousands more youth. Madam Speaker, the importance of technology and its ability to not just empower our youth, but to develop our nation cannot be overstated. As Member of Parliament, I have used my empowerment sessions to impress upon our young adults in East Central the importance of capitalizing on the computer and digital skills training programs being offered by HART and other institutions to make themselves more marketable and adaptable for the jobs of the future. I am mindful of the time and I will await the decision of the House as it relates to continuing my presentation.
Madam Speaker, I now move for the suspension of the standing orders to enable the minister to continue his speech to its conclusion, notwithstanding the time limit on speeches.
Members, the question before the House is that the member be given sufficient time to complete his presentation. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam Speaker, I promise not to keep us here until tomorrow morning. Madam Speaker, I want to advance the idea of making Portmore, more specifically, the new Resilience Park, home of a central youth innovation center that focuses on high-tech skills training and innovation, which is crucial in developing Jamaica's global competitiveness as a modern economy. With some 30,000 young people living in Portmore, and by partnering with HEART, the Ministries of Education, Science, Energy and Technology, Madam Speaker, this hub would be transformational in youth empowerment and navigating our country through the fourth industrial revolution. A main objective of this center would also be the making, repairing and installation of solar panels throughout the Sunshine City, whilst representations can be made to the government to provide concessions to citizens who use solar energy. Madam Speaker, with the ongoing war between Russia and the Ukraine in Eastern Europe, rising oil prices around the globe, oil and gas prices around the globe, it is advisable that more Jamaicans resort to solar energy to save on expenses, even as the government balances the economy, lives and livelihood amidst global economic and political turmoil. Madam Speaker, I pause here to add that it cannot be denied that as a nation, our government has worked and continues to work tirelessly to realize the hope of prosperity for all Jamaicans. As noted by the World Bank, under the stewardship of Prime Minister Holness and Minister Clark, we have achieved an extraordinary economic turnaround, notwithstanding the global crisis blooming in the Eastern Europe and notwithstanding the post-pandemic COVID-19 period. Madam Speaker, whilst governments in developed countries such as the United Kingdom and France are experiencing serious economic and political turmoil, so much so that the 14th of September was marked as Black Wednesday, with the pound falling to its lowest rate since 1985, this economy continues to grow. This Jamaican currency continues to remain strong. Madam Speaker, as it relates to anti-personal indoctrination against ourselves, I wish to note the following. The roots of the enslavement of our people run deep. They are deeply rooted in the formation of our inner cities and developing communities. They have taken roots in the very minds of our sisters and brothers. They have blossomed more than poverty, for they have also birthed the anti-personal indoctrination against ourselves that sees many of us espousing values and norms that have transformed us into the very oppressors our ancestors fought and died for centuries to liberate us from. As a nation, we cannot persist with these prejudices steeped in a history of colonial self-hate and anti-blackness that sees so many Jamaicans embarrassed and felt otherwise and feel otherwise discriminated against. Madam Speaker, I'll share one story with you. In March of this year, a young man and his grandmother came to my office. His grandmother was most upset with what she determined to be an unfair practice. Madam Speaker, her grandson, who is Rastafari, she says, is forced to wear a tam to cover his locks. His grandmother said to me, Mr. Terrelong, why him have to cover his ear with the tam, Mr. Terrelong? It makes his hair sweaty. It makes it not smell so good, Madam Speaker, and I wish to see him able to wear his locks freely. The truth, Madam Speaker, is that the legacy of the enslavement of our people has caused much of the sociological issues that plague our societies today, including absentee fatherism, informal settlements, land and wealth distribution. The history of enslavement has caused the uncomfortable truth of identity in Jamaica, vis-a-vis how we see ourselves as black people and how others see us. Madam Speaker, whilst I recognize the beauty of our motto, out of many one people, and the inclusivity of it all, for we are all members, we are all brothers and sisters of the one race, the one Jamaica. However, Madam Speaker, the discrimination is still felt by many in our society, and it is felt mostly by those of Afro descent. So much so, Madam Speaker, that many have adopted the unhealthy and unsafe practice of skin bleaching in our country. To combat this anti-personal indoctrination against ourselves, Madam Speaker, I strongly support the view that African history pre-transatlantic slavery and Garveyism must be taught in all our schools. To understand who we are as a people, we must understand where we are from. To quote Marcus Garvey, a people without the knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture are like a tree without roots. For our young kings and queens to truly understand that the black skin is not a badge of shame, they must know where they are coming from. That their ancestry did not begin in chains, but rather that colonialism and the enslavement of our ancestors interrupted the glorious history of kings and queens, architects and scientists, navigators and farmers, herdsmen and craftsmen, doctors and scholars. That theirs was a world where the beauty of black skin and black hair was celebrated and not veiled in self-hate and shame. In similar vein, Madam Speaker, in teaching African history, it is pivotal that every Jamaican child learns of the great civilizations that existed in Africa before slavery and colonialism. I believe this too will positively impact how they see themselves. Imagine the sense of empowerment and pride if every Jamaican child, like the little girl in Gregory Park who I spoke to recently, and when I told her, Madam Speaker, you look so beautiful and intelligent, her remark was, me not beautiful, me ugly. And I said to her, why would you say you're ugly? She said, because me too black and me ear picky. Madam Speaker, imagine if girls and boys like her learnt about great Africans like Mansa Musa, who remains the richest man in history some 700 years following his death in the 14th century. Imagine if they knew about the great civilizations of the Yoruba and Igbo people in Nigeria, the great civilizations in Ghana and Egypt, King Hannibal, King Takara, King Shaka, Queen Nzinga, Queen Nefertiti, Nanaya of Ashanti, the warrior queens of the Dahomey, ancient kingdoms of Kush and Nubia, and the wonders of Ethiopia. They must learn how Africa helped to develop Europe, and that for centuries before the birth of Christ, Greek philosophers like Plato, Pythagoras, Aristotle, and countless others spent years and decades studying in the ancient African city of Kemet. That is our history, and these are valuable programs and lessons that we must devise to teach our young kings and queens. Madam Speaker, as a nation I believe, and I'll say this point briefly, as a nation I believe that we could benefit greatly from our own Crown Act. The Crown Act, Madam Speaker, speaks to creating a respectful and open workplace for natural hair. It is an act that started in California and is now in several states across the United States. And essentially, Madam Speaker, it prevents the discrimination against black hair in all sections of our society and guards them for their identity. Madam Speaker, toxic masculinity remains a problematic issue for Jamaica. Recently, in East Central St. Catherine, in September, 2 young girls were viciously attacked, chopped up with a machete, and one of them raped. Madam Speaker, it was the most unfortunate incident, and it brings to the fore that topic of toxic masculinity. Madam Speaker, as it relates to our women and girls, our sisters in this society, I will always lend my voice to discussing this topic. For notwithstanding all our wonders and the beauty of our culture, women in Jamaica, some 25% of all women, experience some sort of physical and sexual violence in their lives. Of that figure, Madam Speaker, 50% of them experience some sort of sexual violence before the age of 18. The two girls in question are aged 12 and 15. Madam Speaker, the scourge of toxic masculinity in this blatant and brutal attack has scarred them forever. Attacks such as these continue to scar our Jamaican women. Madam Speaker, the stench of toxic masculinity cannot be covered by long skirts down to ankles, as this will not stop predatory or toxic behavior. It will not stop our women and girls from being raped. Madam Speaker, what we need are more programs, more discussions, so that our young men can understand that it does not mean that aggression is not equated to masculinity. That aggression and the that aggression and the show of sexual prowess and violence, that the subjugation of our women, that the brutal murder of our women does not equate to masculinity. Madam Speaker, finally, I wish to close by reminding all Jamaicans that in realizing the prosperity, the hope of prosperity, it will take all of us working together. In the face of great adversity across the globe, this government has continued to balance our lives. This government continues to instill confidence. This government continues to instill hope in all Jamaicans. Madam Speaker, we want what is best for our people. We want our people to have all the benefits and rights that we have, that all our children have. And in so doing, Madam Speaker, we remain committed. I remain committed in the House before us that together we will never stop until each and every single one of you realize your empowerment, your full potential in a Jamaica land we love. I thank you.
Madam Speaker, a spirited presentation. We've had two very spirited presentations, excellent presentations, Madam Speaker. I now ask that the debate be suspended until tomorrow, Wednesday, October 26th. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I want to thank the member from St. Catherine East Central for his excellent presentation and spirited presentation. The question before the House is that the state of the constituency debate be suspended until tomorrow, Wednesday, the 26th of October. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Member?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, it is our wish for the Bail Act to be examined by a joint select committee of this Parliament, but before it can be referred to this committee, it must be read a second time. So I now move that a bill entitled an Act to repeal and replace the Bail Act and to provide for connected matters be read a second time.
Members, the question before the House is that the bill be read a second time. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill entitled an Act to repeal and replace the Bail Act and to provide for connected matters read a second time.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, I now move, be it resolved, that this Honourable House appoint a special select committee comprising the following members. Yours truly, Marlene Malahoo Fort, Honourable Dr. Horace Chang, Honourable Delroy Chuck, Mr. Donovan Williams, Dr. Michelle Charles, Mr. Fitz-Jackson, to sit jointly with a similar committee to be appointed by the Senate to consider and report on a bill entitled An Act to Repeal and Replace the Bail Act and to provide for connected matters.
Members, those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I now ask for the recommittal of items, statements by ministers through to presentation. I now ask for the recommittal of the agenda items, statement by ministers, through to presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained.
Statements by ministers. Announcements.
Laid on the table of the House today are the following: report of investigation concerning allegations of conflict of interest, irregularities and/or impropriety in the appointment of Mrs. Olive Downer Walsh to the National Board of Directors of the Rural Agriculture Development Authority, and Ministry Paper number 88 of 2022 entitled Cabinet Agenda Issues dated August 22, 2022.
Bills brought from the Senate, petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally, questions and answers to questions.
Madam Speaker, today the Honourable Nigel Clark, MP, Minister of Finance and the Public Service, will respond to questions standing in his name on question paper, as well as the Honourable Christopher Tufton, MP, Minister of Health and Wellness, will respond to questions standing in his name as well.
Madam Speaker, I invite the Minister to answer the questions that are standing in my name.
Madam Speaker, I rise to answer the questions. First, would the Minister indicate the basis on which companies are granted waivers of the common external tariff? Response. Jamaica, having entered into a customs union with other Caribbean countries, operates a common external tariff along with trading partners of the Caribbean Community, CARICOM, governed by the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas. Under the CET regime, Common External Tariff, CET I'll use interchangeably, goods imported from third countries are subject to the duties listed in the CET, while similar goods imported from CARICOM countries and certified to be of CARICOM origin do not attract these import duties. Article 83 of the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas governs the operation of the Common External Tariff. In particular, Article 83, subsection 1 states that the, and I quote, alteration or suspension of the Common External Tariff shall be decided by COTED. And COTED, for the benefit of those listening who don't know, is the Council for Trade and Economic Development. It's a CARICOM body made up of ministers of from the various member states, ministers, I think, of industry and commerce. Article 83, subsection 2 states that, and I quote, a member state may apply to COTED for authorization to suspend the applicable common external tariff on an item. Article 83, subsection 3, as amended, sets out the specific circumstances that COTED will take into account in granting the authorization to a member state to suspend the common external tariff. These include A, that the product is not being produced in the Caribbean community, meaning in CARICOM, and B, the quantity of the product being produced in the community does not satisfy the demand in the community, among a number of other circumstances listed in Article 83, subsection 3. So the idea is if a good is being produced in CARICOM that can satisfy the market, there's a common external tariff that protects the CARICOM producer. If the good is not being produced in CARICOM, or it's been produced but it can't satisfy the market, the common external tariff, there are grounds for the common external tariff to be suspended, and that authorization is provided by COTED. Now, the process of application. The application to COTED for suspension of the CET is done by the designated competent authority in the member state. The competent authority for Jamaica is the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce. However, prior to the application to COTED, the ministry responsible for industry needs to obtain a letter of no objection from the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service, and that entity must be satisfied with the request for the CET suspension. With respect to petroleum products, however, Madam Speaker, there's an extra step. The ministry responsible for energy, science and technology receives applications from members of the energy subsector for CET suspension. These applications are assessed by MSET based on the conditions outlined in Article 83, subsection 3, and should the request meet one or more of those conditions, MSET then forwards the application to the Ministry of Finance for its consideration. The Ministry of Finance evaluates the submission based on revenue considerations as well as noting the recommendations from MSET. Thereafter, a letter of no objection, if so determined, is prepared and sent to MSET and copied to the Ministry of Industry and Commerce. The Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce acts on the letter of no objection by forwarding the application to COTED. So they're setting out the procedure. Question 2. Will the Minister confirm that a waiver of the CET was granted to West Indies Petroleum South Terminal in the year 2021? And the answer to that is negative. An application for CET suspension sought nor granted with respect to West Indies Petroleum South Terminal Limited. However, Madam Speaker, West Indies Petroleum Limited, which is a separate legal entity, submitted an application to the Government of Jamaica, and the Government of Jamaica, in accordance with the procedures I laid out earlier, and the Government of Jamaica applied to COTED for authorization to suspend the common external tariff with respect to gasoline products imported into Jamaica by West Indies Petroleum Limited. The authorization was approved by COTED in 2021, and the Government of Jamaica acted on this authorization and suspended the CET with respect to gasoline products imported into Jamaica by West Indies Petroleum. For greater clarity, Madam Speaker, it should be noted that West Indies Petroleum South Terminal Limited operates from a special economic zone. And it's my understanding that in addition to other commercial activities, including supplying ships at sea with fuel, it exports petroleum products from the Special Economic Zone into Jamaica to West Indies Petroleum Limited, which makes West Indies Petroleum South Terminal the exporter, while West Indies Petroleum Limited the importer and consignee. For even further clarity, Madam Speaker, only the importer of product into the domestic space of Jamaica can benefit from a suspension of the common external tariff with respect to that product. Question 3, Part A, or question 3. If the answer to Part 2 is in the affirmative, would the Minister indicate the following, the rationale for granting the waiver? Well, I already said the answer to Part 2 was not in the affirmative, even though I went further to provide further information, getting to the substance of, I believe, what is being asked. However, as stated above, Jamaica applied to COTED, and I'm repeating myself here, for authorization to suspend the common external tariff with respect to petroleum products imported into Jamaica by West Indies Petroleum Limited. This authorization was granted by COTED in 2021, and the government acted on this authorization and suspended the CET with respect to gasoline products imported into Jamaica by West Indies Petroleum Limited. The application to and the authorization of COTED were in keeping with Article 83, subsection 3A, and that is that the gasoline products being imported could no longer be sourced within the Caribbean community. Part B, the value of the waiver in terms of revenues foregone by the government of Jamaica. Madam Speaker, the common external tariff on motor spirits is 10%. Up to November 2018, substantial volumes of gasoline were imported into Jamaica each year from Trinidad and Tobago, which had the capacity to supply the CARICOM market. In November 2018, however, the government of Trinidad and Tobago, so the vast majority of gasoline imported finished product. You remember, we have a refinery here that can make product, but its capacity is limited. So sometimes we import finished product. And prior to 2018, virtually all of the finished product imported into Jamaica came from outside of the CARICOM region because the CET acted as a protection. Okay? In November 2018, however, the government of Trinidad and Tobago closed the Petroleum Company of Trinidad and Tobago, which is known as Petrotrin, and gasoline imports were no longer possible from sources within CARICOM. The basis of the common external tariff on gasoline imports was therefore eroded. Incidentally, Madam Speaker, there was a time that we used to talk about the trade deficit with Trinidad, and I just put this on the answers here just for, trade deficit with Trinidad, which was as high as $1.5 billion US back in 2008 when we had that spiral, is down to less than $120 million today, US dollars. Just coming out report, right? So the primary, I know. The primary import was fuel, was oil, but it caused a lot of consternation in Jamaica at the time. You remember, unfairly, yeah. So it's kind of normalized now in that respect, but clearly we're importing from somewhere else. So it's less than 120 million, yeah. So beginning in November 2018, that's 2020 data. I'd have to check what 2021 is, but in 2020, it was 120 million. So beginning in 2018, therefore, the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service began to provide no objections to the Ministry to MSET for it to seek the authorization of COTED to suspend the CET on gasoline imports for importers who applied. Since that time, the CET has been continuously suspended on gasoline imports for applicants who made representations to MSET. More specifically, from November 2018, applications from Petrodram and from all major gasoline marketing companies for suspension of the CET on gasoline imports have been favorably considered. Again, Madam Speaker, the basis for this is that since November 2018, there has been no source of gasoline imports within CARICOM. So, to be clear, while the CET regime on gasoline imports existed, well, the law is still in place. It's just that we have suspended its application. The vast majority of gasoline imports into Jamaica would have come from Trinidad and Tobago. As such, the CET collected on gasoline imports during 2017, for example, the last full year of Petrotrin's operations, was only 30 million Jamaican dollars. Okay, because what happened is everybody would have imported from Trinidad. With respect to the opportunity cost, and that's why the question is a little, because what we collected on CET prior to Petrotrin being shut down was $30 million a year. But if you ask the opportunity cost, right, if we were to say that even though there's no production from CARICOM, we still want to apply the CET, which is not the original intent, then for the year 2021, the CET suspended on motor spirits was overall, from Petrodram, from all the marketing companies, from everybody, was approximately $4 billion. However, the emphasis here is on opportunity costs. This was not an amount that was previously being collected, and I'm repeating for emphasis, as the imports were previously originating from Trinidad and Tobago and entering Jamaica without duty in accordance with the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas. Now, you asked specifically about WIP, and I'll just give you the specific dates for which their suspension was active. For the period February 17, 2021 to February 14, 2022, the opportunity cost, or the CET, if it were imposed, would have amounted to $688 million. Part C, the length of the period for which the waiver was granted, the suspension was granted. COTED authorized the government of Jamaica to suspend the CET on gasoline imports by West Indies Petroleum for the period February 17, 2021 to February 14, 2022. Question 4, whether the waiver was discontinued, and if so, why it was discontinued. Response, CET suspensions are always for very specific periods. At the end of the period, the applicant can always reapply. Question 5, whether any concerns were raised with the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service about the operations of the company prior to the granting of the waiver. No formal concerns were raised with the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service. It is an open secret that within the fraternity of West Indies Petroleum, there has been a huge corporate dispute, the details of which various parties, various sides to that dispute, have been sharing with persons willing to listen. But no formal concerns were ever raised with the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service prior to MSET's application to COTED for a CT suspension and COTED's approval of same. However, just for a point of clarity, whether there are complaints or not, provided that those complaints do not have a bearing on Article 83, subsection 3 as amended of the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, there will be no reason to object to the application. Question 6, would the Minister indicate whether West Indies Petroleum South Terminal Limited was a consignee of the fuel product that was imported or a party to an imported fuel supply agreement? Response, West Indies Petroleum South Terminal Limited was not the consignee. The imported fuel products were consigned to West Indies Petroleum Limited. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Minister. Could you indicate whether other marketing companies continue to benefit from the CET suspension now, and whether WIP has reapplied for a continuation of the waiver, and what the response of the ministry is?
Yes, Madam Speaker, I can confirm that all entities that have applied, all marketing companies that import fuel into Jamaica who have applied have benefited from the CET suspension, and those have been in most instances for a year, I believe. But when they've expired, since November 2018, they've reapplied and it has been renewed for all marketing companies importing. West Indies Petroleum, the existing one expired in February 2022 and they have reapplied, and I believe an extension was also granted to them in keeping with what we've done with all of the marketing companies who import fuel into Jamaica, including Petrodram.
Madam Speaker, just to be clear, the arrangement with respect to West Indies Petroleum and this CET waiver involved petroleum products, coming into Jamaica into a SEZ here in Jamaica, which is when it crosses out of the SCC into the domestic market, that would attract CET were the waiver not given. Is that correct? Okay. So when we're talking about the CET waiver in respect of this particular company, suspension, in respect of this particular company, we're really talking about product that would have entered Jamaica into a SEZ without any question of any duty being payable on that. But because it's now being brought into the domestic market for sale, there would normally have to have been, that would have triggered a CET payment if it was sourced outside of CARICOM, because it didn't have sufficient value added to be treated as a community product. Is there any other petroleum company, marketing company in Jamaica that has that arrangement? Or is West Indies Petroleum the only one that has that arrangement where it is operating from a SEZ, a special economic zone, which has a tax privilege status, but it is selling to an affiliate or related party in the domestic market and is getting a suspension for that transaction? Are there?
Yeah, so West Indies Petroleum is a relatively new enterprise that's set up, I don't know exactly, but in certainly in the after 2000 or after 2010 maybe. To the best of my knowledge, it's involved in the group is involved in at least two businesses. One is the business of supplying ships at sea, which other marketing companies in Jamaica, to the best of my knowledge, they're not involved in. And they're also involved in domestic business. Given the fact that West Indies Petroleum is doing things that other marketing companies are not doing, it shouldn't be surprising that they have a different structure. So the answer to your question is, to the best of my knowledge, I don't believe that the other marketing companies are structured similarly, where there's an SEZ entity and a domestic entity.
Okay, so theirs is a unique arrangement in that regard. Could you tell me where is the SEZ from which they operate?
When you say where, you remember how the SEZ regime works, is that anywhere in Jamaica can be an SEZ. If I apply for an SEZ for number 2 Dumbarton Avenue, once I fulfill the requirements, number 2 Dumbarton Avenue is designated as a SEZ. Right.
Where is theirs?
Theirs is in, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's in Port Esquivel.
Okay.
Yeah, that's South Terminal. Yeah.
So it's by a wharf. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I note that you say only the import of the product into Jamaica can benefit from the suspension. So West Indies Petroleum was the beneficiary of the suspension because they are deemed to be the importer, even though the goods actually physically come into Jamaica to the SEZ location in Port Esquivel, brought in, to use a neutral term, brought in by an affiliate, West Indies, what do they call it? South Terminal. So, although the product enters Jamaica physically into an SEZ, it is not that entity that brings it there that gets a suspension. It is the entity that receives it from them, an affiliate, that is deemed to be the importer, even though the goods have already entered Jamaica geographically, but not for purposes of customs and border taxes. And so is that why West Indies Petroleum would have been the entity to get the suspension in this instance?
Yes, so this is analogous to in what happens in other sectors as well. The importer is the entity that will be obligated for the duties and taxes that are applicable on importing product into Jamaica, whether that product is petroleum or it is some other product. And therefore, if there is to be a suspension, it is that Jamaican importer who would apply. Now, in the case of WIP, as I said, I think they have two businesses. So what they import into the South Terminal, a lot of that goes to quote-unquote ships at sea. And they have another business of supplying product into Jamaica, and that's a subset of the amount. So it's only the amounts designated to Jamaica that come through WIP that that can apply for a suspension of the CET. Now, this relationship between the SEZ space and the domestic space is one that is common to other industries. The one that is in the news all the time would be the BPO industry, right, where we have work from home as an example. The reason why that has been an issue, that is that you have product in a SEZ space, i.e. computers, and you want to take them out of the SEZ space to a non-SEZ space to work from home. And we have to in order to keep the regime healthy, as much as that is desirable and necessary, we need to make sure that it operates in a way that's consistent with the framework. So, I mean, unnecessary to introduce that. The point I'm making is that if you move from SEZ space, which is by law, certainly by tax law, not considered to be within the normal boundaries of Jamaica, and you move into the domestic space, then the duties and taxes that apply on importation would apply.
Thank you. And in your final response, where you say that the consignee wasn't West Indies Petroleum South Terminal, the imported fuel products were consigned to West Indies Petroleum, what you are then referring to, that consignment, is a related party sale between the de facto entity that brought the product into Jamaican geographic space, into the SEZ, then sells into the domestic market to its related party. And that related party transaction is what you are referring to as the consignment to an importer. That's what you're saying here. I mean, and it is quite substantial, because if the opportunity cost of CET foregone in 2021 was $4 billion, and that which was foregone in respect of this particular company was 688 million, it's close to 20% of all of the tax that was not collected would have been referable to the transfer of product across the SEZ border from the de facto importer to the de jure importer within the domestic space. Thank you. It's an interesting issue, and it's something I think we have to watch closely because of the potential for revenue leakage in these kinds of arrangements. Thank you.
Yes, but we have to be also clear to separate responsibilities, right? The responsibility of the Ministry of Finance as it regards these matters is, is this in keeping with the revised Treaty of Shangri-La's? Are the products available in the domestic space? Those are the questions that we have to ask. And if those questions the answers to those questions support a non-objection, and we have to give the non-objection. Now, other arms of government have to be concerned with making sure that what is due to Caesar, right? Other arms of government, the customs agency, for example, needs to.
But Minister, customs comes under the Ministry of Finance, and you are the gatekeepers of the revenue of the country. So it very much concerns you whether or not the proper collection of tax is occurring. It's not some extraneous entity outside of your ministry. It's directly within the purview of your ministry through the executive agency, customs, and any other, that might RPD, etc., etc. So I think it's important that in considering your discretion, whether or not to issue a no objection in respect of any particular suspension or waiver or whatever it may be, not only the treaty itself would be looked at, but the broader circumstances of your comfort that the particular arrangement was, especially if it's not at arm's length, is one where it does not involve any revenue leakage of whatever nature. And I would ask, are you so satisfied, Minister, in this instance?
No, absolutely. If I were to speak more specifically, I would say that the tax department or the tax policy department of the Ministry of Finance, their responsibility is in this matter, is to the Treaty of Shangri-La's, making sure that the conditions that justify suspension are indeed met, and for the non-objection to be provided. Without saying too much, I mean, the Jamaica Customs Agency is quite vigilant in matters such as this, and has been active in this space. But the overall sort of picture is there's no producer in CARICOM of gasoline products. If gasoline products are being imported into Jamaica by any marketing company or by Petrodram, it's within their right to apply for suspension and as I've just indicated, all who do have been in receipt of that suspension. But yeah.
Could you tell me the date for 2022 that the suspension was approved for West Indies Petroleum?
I don't have the date on me. I wouldn't have that, member. I'd have to.
So I asked a question which you haven't answered yet, Minister. I asked you, given that all of these agencies to do with revenue fall under your purview, in deciding whether or not to grant a suspension to a particular player, whoever it may be, do you look to be satisfied from the relevant agencies that the arrangements are sufficiently transparent and vigilantly monitored, that there is no revenue leakage? And more specifically, are you satisfied that that is the case here, in this instance?
So, remember, the point I'm making to you is that the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas makes it very clear what the conditions for a suspension are. And it's not the government of Jamaica applies for suspension, the company applies to the relative ministry for a suspension. The Ministry of Finance offers a non-objection, and the approval of the suspension is granted by COTED. Okay. With respect to, I just wanted to repeat that, with respect to this particular matter, I am aware that the Customs Agency has looked into this particular. I don't know how much I'm at liberty to say to respond to your question, member. But I would just say to you that the Customs Agency is on top of this situation. If I can leave it at that, the Customs Agency is on top of this situation in terms of, and by situation I mean the fact that we have an SEZ entity that is involved in export out of Jamaica, but that entity also exports into Jamaica. Remember that the problem that you are alluding to the potential only arises if there are duties and taxes in place. That is when, so the point you're raising now maybe should have been raised 4 years ago. When there are no duties and taxes, meaning the difference between outside and inside is not, meaning there's no CET, then the risk that you are alluding to disappear.
Are there not other taxes?
The risk that you're referring to disappear. Oh, yes. You mean like yes. Yes. So I just want to leave it, at this, to talk about entities' business in the House of Parliament. I'm not even sure what the rules are on that. I would just leave it at that. The Customs Agency, which I've given full, I don't interfere in their operations, is aware and on top of the situation. In addition, and has the procedures that have to be followed have been made very, very clear. Yeah.
Just for clarification, I am not alluding to anything. Your answers indicated that in this particular instance, the importation is actually a transaction that takes place within Jamaica's geographic borders between two related parties. And the CET foregone is about 17% of the total that was foregone for all imports into Jamaica. So it's substantial, and I just want to make sure that you are satisfied that, given the nature of this arrangement, that there is no revenue leakage taking place, and that would apply whoever is involved. I'm only focusing on it because of the nature of the relationship between the importer and the exporter in this instance, which is two affiliated companies. That is all.
Thank you for asking the questions. Madam Speaker, over to you. Yeah.
Dr. Tufton.
Madam Speaker, would the Minister of Health and Wellness answer the question standing my name?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to answer the notices of questions. Question 1, would the Minister...
Member, just before you proceed, notwithstanding, in keeping with the standing orders, it is now past 3:15. We seek your permission. The question is that we continue on the item questions and answers to questions at this time, which is now almost 4:08. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Go ahead, Dr. Tufton.
Thank you, my colleagues, and thank you, Madam Speaker. So, question 1, will the Minister of Health and Wellness indicate the full budget for the Code Care program for financial year 2022-2023? Just for context, Madam Speaker, Code Care was announced in my sectorial presentation, and it's designed to reduce wait time for elective surgeries to less than 180 days and to increase the number of surgeries conducted over the same period by at least 80%, targeting about 2,000 surgeries over a 12-month period. It has 5 components. It has an operating theatre rehabilitation component, public-private partnership for use of private operating theatres component, thirdly, a procurement of surgical equipment and supplies, fourthly, staffing for increased surgeries operation, and fifthly, a project management component as a special program designed to reduce wait time. In relation to the question, the following budgetary allocation: rehabilitation of operating theatres, some 80 million, public-private engagement, 200 million, equipment, 223,590, $800,000, so 223,590,000. Nursing missions, 279 million. Additional staff hours, 153,928. That's overtime staff. Project management, 23,580. That's 23,580,000. Communications, which is 59 million, and that includes communication, not just advertising, but communication with the overseas entities, visiting those entities and so on. That gives you a grand total, Madam Speaker, of $1,019,139,489. Second question, would the Minister indicate what portion of this budget is earmarked for the public-private surgical partnership program for financial year 2022-2023? The answer is approximately 200 million. Thirdly, what would the Minister indicate the number of contracts signed so far for this financial year? With which private medical facilities have contracts been entered, and the contract sums for each contract? The response, the entities, Montego Bay Hospital and Urology Center for 23 million, Hospiten for 23 million, and G-West Corporation 23 million. These are all entities in Western Jamaica. Madam Speaker, we are now negotiating for entities on this side of the island, but that's the outlay, each giving an equal amount as are budgeted for. Fourth question, would the Minister indicate the average cost of hernia repairs, including post-recovery, at each of these private medical facilities? I wasn't clear on that question, but if the member is asking what it is costing the government to outsource, it's approximately 270,000. Fifthly, would the Minister also indicate the cost of each cataract removal surgery, including post-surgery, at each of these medical facilities? Response, medical facilities have not been engaged to date to conduct cataract removal surgeries, so there's no figure to give. And finally, sixth, would the Minister state the total number of surgeries and types of surgeries expected to be conducted under the program? Hernias, almost 1,200. These are all round numbers, Madam Speaker. So 1,200 hernias, fibroids 400, plastic surgeries, and this is not the one that aims to make your optics a little more presentable. These are corrective surgeries, burnt victims, accident victims, etc., so that they can become more functional. And those are the approximate numbers. Now, Madam Speaker, just to add before I take my seat and listen to the follow-up questions and comments, that this is the plan for Code Care, but it is subject to some adjustments based on the needs, the demands, and where we get in the program at any particular point in time. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much for the answers, Minister. First of all, you indicated that there is no contract for any cataract surgery. Is it that it has not been entered into yet, or it's not proposed to have any? Secondly, Minister, you indicated that the budget for the public-private engagement, which is what we are talking about now, and the question is in the region of $200 million. Sorry. You indicated, however, that there's proposed to do 1,200 hernias. And if you are budgeting $270,000 for each hernia, we're looking at over $300 million for this particular thing. How do you rationalize in terms of the numbers that you have given us here? And you have not factored into fibroids, plastic surgeries, ENT yet for this $200 million that you have indicated. Just one final comment, Minister. You highlighted at the top of the list in the rehabilitation operating theaters. And you do know that even with your sojourn in Cuba, that I've been asking questions about the theater rehabilitation in Jamaica. Are both programs running side by side?
Thank you, Member. Madam Speaker, the first question on cataract surgeries, yes, we are looking at it, but I didn't want to speak specifically unless we are finalizing the arrangements. I mean, part of the visit to Cuba was to actually restore the ophthalmology program, the eye care program, which we are hoping to start early New Year. So we do have a plan, but I didn't include it because at this point in time there's no specific plans, but it is being looked at. The second question of PPPs and the calculation that the member makes about the cost on average of cataract surgery, hernias. So yes, I appreciate the calculation, but bear in mind it's not going to be the hernias solely a public-private arrangement to do the hernias. This is a multi-pronged approach. A big part of clearing up some of the backlog would be to use our own theaters, operating theaters. Part of it would be to provide extra time for our operating theater nurses, the repairs that will be done, and even the bringing in on a short-term basis of overseas operating theater nurses. So the simple answer is that all hernias won't be done by a private entity, and so the numbers do calculate out. On the issue of the operating theaters and whether or not there's a parallel program, yes, there is. The process has started with the engagement of a firm to prepare bills of quantities for Bustamante Hospital for Children, Victoria Jubilee and Kingston Public Hospital, and that assessment is being coordinated by the Office of the Chief Medical Officer and the projects unit. We're looking at others, but those were the starting points. So yes, sorry? Yes, we're looking at others. We're looking at others. So we are working on the operating theaters at the same time. Madam Speaker, thank you.
Madam Speaker, on the same item, questions and answers to questions. Honorable Nigel Clark, Minister, would like to make a further comment on the responses he gave.
No, just because of the nature of these matters, and there are things in the, it's just very important to be clear that we will recall, I just want to remind, that the Auditor General would have done her customary audits of customs back in 2021, and there were certain weaknesses that were pointed out in various aspects, including in, overseeing of sufferance wharfs or bunkering operations, etc. And those would have led to, that's why I can speak, but that's why I said what I said, that customs is on it. Those would, having pointed out those weaknesses, I believe the AGD would have gone even further and looked specifically at certain entities, let's leave it at that, and what the points made by the AGD have been taken on board by customs, and they have strengthened their oversight of operations like these. And that's a basis on which I'm saying that customs is on top of it. They have been provided with some support by the AGD, was rightly pointed out weaknesses procedurally and otherwise, and they've tightened up procedures to ensure that risks are minimized. I just wanted to add that, and that's in the public. That's a part of the public record already.
Thank you, Minister. Madam Speaker, could you continue on the items, please?
Motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice, motions relating to sittings of the House, motions for leave to introduce bills, presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained. And we're back.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is not contemplated for us to do any further business for the day. I therefore ask that the House adjourns until tomorrow, that being Wednesday, October 26, 2022 at 2 p.m. Madam Speaker, the State of Constituency debates will continue tomorrow, and we will have presentations from Honourable Minister of State, Mr. Franklin Whittle, Member of Parliament for St. Elizabeth South East, as well as presentation from MP Daniel Lawrence, elected representative for Westmoreland Eastern. Yes. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The question before the House is that the House do adjourn until tomorrow, Wednesday, the 26th of October at 2 p.m. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. This House is now adjourned.